They say first impressions matter, but what about the first impression your home gives to energy? You see, before luck ever enters your home, it meets the doormat. Not your altar, not your wealth corner, your threshold. That small rectangle you step over every day without thinking is, in the language of Feng Shui and ancient energy traditions, not just a welcome mat, it is a gatekeeper. And if you've been wondering why opportunities hesitate, why peace feels fleeting, or why your intentions haven't quite rooted, look down. What's sitting at your front door? In Feng Shui, the main entrance is known as the mouth of Qi, where life force flows in. If that entry is cluttered, ignored, or mismatched energetically, then all the affirmations in the world can't offset what the universe is sensing at the gate. And the doormat is the first silent messenger. Here's what most people miss. Effort doesn't always equal alignment. You may sweep your floors, light incense, and say kind mantras. But if the front of your home says, "I'm not ready," energy listens. A ragged, sarcastic, or neglected doormat may be quietly repelling the very blessings you've been calling in. It's not about superstition, it's about signal. In today's video, we'll uncover 5 subtle placement mistakes that might be leaking your luck, and share 3 time-honored ways to transform your doormat into a sacred, wealth-welcoming symbol. We'll go beyond fabric and color into intention and orientation. Because your threshold isn't just a space to wipe your shoes, it's a place to declare your readiness. So before we go further, if these grounded teachings speak to your spirit, I warmly invite you to like this video, share it with someone redesigning their space or their life, and subscribe to New Day Mindfulness. We're close to 1,000 followers, and every new voice helps this wisdom reach homes that need quiet transformation the most. Now, let's take a closer look at the spot where luck either knocks or quietly turns away. The sacred threshold. Why the doormat is energetically loud. In Feng Shui, few areas are as misunderstood and as powerful as the front entrance. While much attention is often given to altars, wealth corners, or bedroom placements, the main door quietly plays the most pivotal role. It is the mouth of Qi, the singular space where all energy, good or bad, enters your home. And yet, many people overlook the one item that speaks first, the doormat. It's easy to assume the mat under your feet is simply for catching dirt or delivering a message of welcome. But in energy terms, this object is far from passive. The doormat is a gatekeeper. It determines whether Qi flows in cleanly or gets blocked, deflected, or distorted before it even crosses the threshold. Just as the lips shape the sound of our words, the mat shapes the quality of incoming fortune. Symbolically, in both Feng Shui and traditional Buddhist architecture, the threshold is not just a physical point, it's a spiritual decision. The moment one crosses the line from outside to inside, from public to private, from chaos to sanctuary, something subtle shifts. In ancient temples, this transition is marked deliberately with rising steps, bells, incense, or scripted proverbs. Why? Because energy has memory. The threshold is where the tone is set. In your home, the doormat is that tone. Material matters. A mat made from natural fibers like coir or bamboo tends to anchor earth energy and helps absorb energetic residue, preventing it from trailing inside. Synthetics, while easier to clean, often trap heat and Qi in unnatural ways, creating a subtle sense of distortion, especially when paired with chaotic patterns or aggressive slogans. Words like "go away," though humorous to some, unconsciously program resistance at the door. Conversely, a symbol like the lotus, infinity loops, or a grounding geometric weave radiates order, warmth, and welcome. Placement also plays a role. A mat that's too small for the width of the door creates a sense of insufficiency. One that curls, frays, or holds on to grime blocks energy flow. If the mat constantly shifts out of place, energy reads this as instability. The best doormat lies flat, grounded, and centered beneath the door, mirroring the balance you hope to establish inside. It tells energy, this space is tended, you are invited, but only if you bring alignment. A beautiful example of this truth came from a viewer in Thailand. She shared that her apartment always felt off, her sleep was inconsistent, and family conversations often ended in miscommunication. One evening, after hearing about the impact of entry qi, she looked down and realized her doormat was cracked, faded, and askew. Its once bright pattern now dull from sun and rain. She quietly replaced it with a soft gold-toned mat embroidered with a subtle lotus bloom. Within days, her sleep deepened. Within a week, her conversations, especially with her teenage son, began flowing with more ease and warmth. She hadn't changed the furniture or painted a wall. She had simply honored the moment of arrival. Energy listens, and it listens first at the threshold. The next time you approach your home, pause before stepping over your doormat. What does it say? What condition is it in? Does it reflect how you wish to be welcomed into your own life? If not, perhaps it's time to reweave the first thread of your home's invitation. 3 hidden mistakes that block flow. Doormats with harsh humor or sarcasm. One of the most overlooked yet quietly corrosive influences at the threshold of a home is the presence of a doormat that carries sarcasm, harsh humor, or ironic messaging. Phrases like, "Come back with coffee," "Hope you like dogs," or the deceptively cheeky "not you again," may spark a momentary chuckle, but energetically, they create an immediate conflict at the point of entry. In Feng Shui, the entrance is not a place for confusion. It is a place for clarity, alignment, and gracious reception. When the first signal your space emits is one of mockery, however humorous in intent, you set an unstable tone not just for visitors, but for the invisible forces that flow in and out of your environment. The main door is often referred to as the mouth of qi, the sacred opening through which life force enters your dwelling. And like any mouth, what it receives and how it receives it matters deeply. Just as food taken in haste can upset the body, energy welcomed with contradiction can disrupt the harmony of a home. Sarcastic language, especially when embedded into the very fibers of your threshold, functions like static noise in a sacred chant. It dilutes the purity of your intention, making it harder for prosperity, peace, and balanced relationships to settle into your space. From a symbolic Buddhist lens, every interaction is karmic. Words, spoken or printed, are not inert. They are vibrational tools that carve the atmosphere around them. Even humor, when unmoored from compassion or clarity, can serve as a subtle mask for rejection. It becomes armor rather than offering. A doormat that reads "leave" or "beware of wife" or "oh no, not you again" might earn a few laughs from guests, but it silently plants a seed of mockery at the gateway of your destiny. And over time, what is sown becomes what is grown. Such messaging may lead to unexplainable frictions, delayed opportunities, miscommunications, recurring minor accidents at the entrance, or visitors who seem emotionally off-center the moment they step inside. One story comes to mind of a couple who had a mat that read, "Welcome-ish." They thought it was funny, a harmless joke. But over the course of a year, they noticed growing misunderstandings with neighbors, awkward interactions with delivery people, and even tension between each other that strangely intensified whenever one of them returned home from work. Upon a Feng Shui consultation, they were advised to change the mat to a simple, natural fiber design with no text, just a grounding pattern. Within weeks, the front entrance felt quieter, less charged. Visitors lingered with more ease, and the couple reported a small but noticeable shift in how they greeted one another. More present, more open, less guarded. All from a mat. Not because the object itself was magic, but because the message it carried was no longer in conflict with the life they hoped to build. In truth, the doormat is not just a place to wipe shoes. It is an energetic filter. It catches whatever we unconsciously carry, dust, yes, but also stress, rushing, resentment, fear. And if it carries a contradictory message, it can amplify what it was meant to diffuse. If your door is the beginning of your inner world, then the mat must be the breath before that entrance, the pause that prepares the body, mind, and spirit for transition. Would you want that breath to be lined with sarcasm or with sincerity? Choosing a mat with a neutral or uplifting symbol, such as a lotus, a tree of life, or even the simple phrase, "welcome on," sends a clear message to the universe. This space is open to peace, to kindness, to aligned fortune. Natural fibers like jute, coir, or bamboo further reinforce earth connection, grounding your threshold with rooted energy. If you crave personality, do so with pattern or color, not with words that mock what you deeply hope for. Humor has its place, but the front door is not a comedy stage. It is a temple gate. In the end, what your mat whispers is what your life absorbs, subtly, daily, and cumulatively. And in Feng Shui, there is no such thing as just decoration. There is only intention, or the absence of it. 2. Slanted or dirty doormats. The placement and condition of a doormat may appear trivial to the untrained eye, but in Feng Shui, nothing that touches the mouth of qi is without consequence. A slanted doormat, even if only slightly askew, speaks a language of disorientation. It implies a tilt in intention, a subtle imbalance in reception. Energy, like water, flows where it is invited. But when that invitation is crooked, physically or symbolically, it sends out a mixed signal. It's as if the home is unsure whether to welcome or deflect. Imagine a guest standing at your threshold, sensing something just slightly off. They may not consciously notice the slant, but the energy speaks first. It whispers of neglect, of hurried attention, of a path not fully aligned. And she listens to that whisper more attentively than it does to the decor beyond the doorway. Dirty or heavily soiled mats compound the issue. In classical Feng Shui, accumulated debris is never just dust. It is stale energy, spiritual residue, emotional residue. When the place meant to catch and cleanse energy becomes neglected, it begins to hold on to what should have been released. Each muddy footprint, each gust of windblown grit, it becomes a stamp of stagnation. Dirt is not the enemy, but ignored dirt is. A mat that is never cleaned becomes less a guardian of the home and more a sponge for unresolved heaviness. And when placed at the energetic gate of your life, it becomes the first thing your incoming opportunities must all step over. In Buddhist metaphor, the threshold represents not just physical transition, but karmic transition. The moment we cross into a new space, we symbolically cross into a new state of awareness. If the doormat, the literal and symbolic first contact, is slanted, neglected, or dusty with yesterday's weight, the initiation into your space becomes muddled. It is akin to bowing at a shrine while your mind wanders. The action is performed, but the essence is lost. Even if the rest of the home is meticulously maintained, this one overlooked corner quietly leaks the energy of misalignment. The path to fortune bends. The conversation with destiny crackles with static. There is a simple yet powerful practice to counter this. Every week, take a few seconds to straighten your mat with full awareness. Not with distraction, not while scrolling your phone, but with presence. Straighten it as you would center a sacred altar. Because in Feng Shui terms, that's exactly what it is. Once a month, prepare a small bowl of citrus-infused water, just a few drops of lime, orange, or grapefruit in warm water. Use a cloth to wipe the mat gently, blessing it with intention. Citrus has long been used in both spiritual and energetic traditions to clear negativity and refresh stagnant fields. As you clean, you're not just removing dust. You are releasing old narratives, missteps, burdens. You are clearing the gateway for new, coherent flow to enter. I once worked with a woman who kept her doormat on a diagonal because it helped her avoid the direct breeze from an apartment hallway vent. Over time, she began to feel that things in her life were always a little off, like arriving just a minute too late for opportunities, or finding that conversations rarely landed as she intended. We realigned the mat, adjusted the airflow with a decorative screen, and introduced a monthly mat cleansing ritual. Within weeks, she reported feeling more held at the entrance to her home, more centered as she arrived and departed. Her morning routine flowed more easily. Her emails received quicker responses. Subtle, perhaps, but real. The truth is, energy doesn't only respond to grand gestures. It listens most intently to the quiet, consistent acts of care. The mat beneath your feet is not just functional, it is foundational. A crooked mat leads to a crooked path. A forgotten mat leads to forgotten dreams. But a mat honored regularly becomes more than a surface. It becomes a doorway of dignity, alignment, and clarity. 3. Doormats with harsh colors. In Feng Shui, color is not decoration, it is vibration. Every hue carries a specific frequency, a subtle call to certain types of energy. And when it comes to the very entrance of your home, the first line of dialogue between your inner world and the universe, color either opens a welcoming tone or shuts it down like a slammed door. This is why the use of harsh colors such as solid black or overly bright red on doormats must be approached with deep intention, not trend-driven impulse. Black, while often considered sleek or sophisticated, holds the energy of the water element. When used appropriately, it invites introspection, depth, and wisdom. But at the threshold of a home, solid black may invoke a heaviness or an emotional withdrawal, especially if it is not counterbalanced by warmth or earthiness around it. In many traditional Feng Shui schools, black is considered absorbing. It pulls energy inward, sometimes too quickly and too deeply, risking energetic stagnation. A jet black doormat that sits alone without texture, pattern, or companion tones often becomes a portal for anxiety or isolation, rather than a cushion for stability. Likewise, bright red, though auspicious in Asian cultures, carries fire energy. It activates, agitates, and commands attention. But when placed in the wrong spot, it can overwhelm the subtle invitation of the qi entering your home. A bright red mat at the front door might symbolize protection, but if the surrounding area is not in harmony, it can repel more than it protects. Imagine qi like a guest approaching your home. Red at the door, when unbalanced, can feel like a shout instead of a greeting. It startles the subtle flow. It stirs unnecessary urgency in a place that should begin with calm. Over time, this may translate into increased emotional reactivity within the household, sleep issues, or relationship misfires, especially if your home leans already toward excess fire or lacks sufficient grounding. It is not that black or red should never be used, but their presence must be intentional, symbolic, and softening. A black mat embroidered with earth-tone mandalas, for example, can transform absorbing energy into contemplative depth. A red mat paired with potted plants or flanked by terracotta tiles can shift from confrontation to celebration. Color, after all, is relational. Its impact depends not just on its own tone, but on the company it keeps. In Buddhist symbolism, red holds sacred power, but always paired with white or gold. Black represents the void, but is tempered with form and meaning. A purely black or red object at your threshold with no spiritual context, no symbolic pairing, no harmonious environment in it, is like a note played in the wrong key. It vibrates, but not in a way that builds harmony. and your front door is no place for dissonance. One family I once worked with in Ho Chi Minh City had a pure red mat they'd bought during a Lunar New Year sale. It was placed right at their glass door, facing southeast. Within 3 months, they reported feeling easily agitated, particularly in the mornings. Conversations felt more like arguments. Meals became rushed. They hadn't connected it to the mat until we walked the space together. We replaced it with a woven mat in a muted coral red with golden lotus patterning, backed by a neutral tan. Within a week, the father joked he could finally have a coffee without starting a war. The energy at the gate had softened. The family rhythm began to breathe again. Your doormat is not a billboard. It is a boundary keeper. It should whisper, not shout. It should guide, not guard. And most importantly, it should support, not dictate, the tone of energy that enters your sacred space. When choosing a color, think not of style, but of resonance. Ask yourself, does this color nourish or agitate? Does it hold the tone of who I want to become or of who I'm trying to protect myself from? Balance matters. If you are drawn to red or black, make sure you surround them with textures, symbols, or tones that remind you of softness, grounding, or spiritual clarity. The harmony at your door begins with the palette you invite to stand sentinel. How to recode the entryway. Simple rituals with deep meaning. In Feng Shui, the entryway is more than just a passage. It is a mouth, a bridge, a karmic threshold. Everything that arrives in your life, every opportunity, challenge, visitor, or breath of new fortune, enters through this portal. And while many people sweep their doorsteps or decorate the walls inside, they often overlook the humble mat beneath their feet, forgetting that this is where energy takes its first step into the home. A door welcomes, but it is the doormat that filters. It is here that intention should be encoded, not as superstition, but as a conscious alignment with how we wish to meet life. The entryway doesn't just need to be clean, it needs to be claimed. One of the most grounding ways to recode this entry space is with a single unseen gesture: the placement of a Feng Shui coin beneath the mat. This coin, ideally round with a square hole in the center, represents the union of heaven, circle, and earth, square. It is a timeless symbol used in rituals, homes, and sacred spaces throughout Asia to create a harmonic channel between the celestial and the grounded. Placing this coin under the mat is not about attracting literal money. It is about welcoming the right kind of circulation, the energy that flows with purpose, balance, and direction. It turns the mat into a seal, one that says, only qi in harmony with this household's values may pass through. If placing a coin feels too abstract, you can add clarity with a natural energetic cleanser. Unprocessed sea salt. Before laying the mat or during a monthly reset, sprinkle a small handful of sea salt at the threshold, not to be seen or stepped in directly, but to form an invisible field that draws out lingering discord. Salt in Feng Shui and Buddhist practice represents both purification and preservation. It dissolves the emotional footprints of arguments that happened at the door, of past residents whose energy may have lingered, of subtle fears that visitors unknowingly leave behind. When swept away the next morning, the salt takes with it what no longer serves, leaving only room for renewal. This practice is particularly potent during the new moon or at the start of a new cycle, such as a birthday, Lunar New Year, or the first day of a new job. But perhaps the most powerful tool, because it is the most personal, is the handwritten intention slip. This is not a full letter or a complex mantra. It is a single sentence, written with presence and folded with care. Only truth and blessing may enter. This house is a place of joy and calm. I welcome what is meant for me. These small declarations, when placed under the mat, begin to imprint into the daily rhythm of your life. You may not reread the sentence every day, but you will step over it. The soles of your shoes, your guest's first impression, your pets as they come and go, all will pass across this quiet invocation. And over time, it begins to work, not through magic, but through repeated alignment. In spiritual disciplines across cultures, language is considered the architecture of reality. What you declare consistently becomes the scaffolding of what shows up at your door. A few months ago, a graphic designer in our New Day Mindfulness community shared that she had been feeling directionless after losing a major client. Instead of diving into frantic networking, she wrote the phrase, "I welcome what is meant for me," folded it neatly, and placed it beneath a plain woven mat at her front door. She did nothing else dramatic. She just crossed that threshold every day with a quiet sense of receptivity. Within 3 weeks, she received not one, but 3 job offers, 2 from people she hadn't spoken to in years. One was a project she had once dreamed about but never pursued. She said it felt as though something opened around her without force, without panic. That's the power of a properly coded threshold. It doesn't push, it aligns. When these small gestures are layered, wishamoyin, salt, statement, they turn a doormat into something far more powerful. It becomes a boundary altar. Not an altar with candles and bells, but one with humility. One that crouches low and whispers welcome to what is kind, firm closure to what is not. You don't need to tell anyone it's there. That's the beauty of threshold rituals. They're not performance. They're prayer and architecture. And in the language of energy, subtle is strong. You might wonder if one tiny change like this could really shift anything significant. But in Feng Shui, nothing is insignificant. A door slightly misaligned can change the qi of an entire room. A mirror angled wrong can reflect away years of opportunity. And a doormat, neglected or empowered, can either anchor your fortune or quietly undo it. That is why these rituals are not about superstition. They are about stewardship. Stewardship of space, of intention, of how we invite life to meet us and how we prepare to meet it back. Choosing the right doormat, shape, symbol, and placement. In Feng Shui, the doormat is not just functional, it is the first visual and energetic imprint anyone receives upon approaching your home. It is the handshake before the door opens, the unspoken boundary between outside chaos and inner peace. And just like the frame of a painting can enhance or weaken its impact, the design and positioning of a doormat can either reinforce your home's energy or quietly chip away at it. When choosing the right doormat, shape, symbol, and placement are not arbitrary decisions. They are micro signals, subtle invitations that speak volumes to the qi of your space. Let's begin with shape, which in Feng Shui isn't just a visual preference, but an energetic statement. A round doormat, for example, is not just pleasing to the eye, it symbolizes wholeness, unity, and cyclical harmony. It softens edges and is especially beneficial for family-centered homes or spaces where emotional flow and connection are a priority. In Buddhist thought, the circle also represents the Dharma chakra, the wheel of spiritual truth. To place a round mat outside your home is, in essence, to say, may what enters here support emotional continuity and balanced relationships. By contrast, a rectangular doormat emphasizes groundedness. Its structure signals long-term intention, boundary clarity, and directional focus. Traits ideal for individuals focused on career development, financial goals, or personal discipline. The rectangle carries a steady vibration. It tells qi, this house is anchored. If you're someone who is trying to stabilize your life after a period of transition, whether emotional, financial, or physical, a rectangular doormat placed deliberately can support that reset. It's a silent contract with the universe that says, I'm ready for structure. Next comes symbolism, which is where your doormat becomes more than fabric and fibers. It becomes a subtle talisman. The lotus flower, for example, is one of the most revered symbols in both Buddhist and Feng Shui practice. It grows in muddy water but emerges untainted, rising clean and beautiful. Having a lotus symbol on your mat is like placing a reminder at your threshold that no matter what comes from the outside, be it noise, judgment, or fear, it will be filtered, transmuted, and left behind. The lotus says, only rise is welcome here. It's especially powerful for those recovering from grief, spiritual disconnection, or environments that previously lacked clarity. Mountains, another classic motif, convey strength and protection. In classical Feng Shui, the black tortoise, symbolized by a mountain or stable backing, is essential for security and long-term support. If your home feels energetically exposed, or if you're trying to cultivate strength after betrayal, instability, or burnout, a mat adorned with a mountain pattern becomes more than decor. It becomes a gentle guardian. Every time you step over it, it whispers, you are backed. For those who favor minimalism or prefer personal resonance over visual graphics, doormats with elegant calligraphy can serve the same purpose. A single word or phrase such as peace, welcome, or abundance written in graceful script holds a vibration. And because language is a form of sacred geometry in many spiritual traditions, the actual strokes of the letters act as visual mantras. But caution is key here. Avoid harsh fonts, aggressive slogans, or sarcastic humor. The entry to your home is not the place for jokes that may carry hidden negativity. What your mat says out loud, your house absorbs in silence. Now let's talk about placement. Even the most energetically aligning mat will lose its power if positioned incorrectly. First, the mat should sit slightly in front of the door threshold, not directly underneath the swinging arc. A doormat that the door constantly drags or catches on symbolizes friction and blockages. In energetic terms, it creates a minor collision point where incoming opportunities have to fight to enter. Qi, much like water, prefers ease of entry. When the path is smooth, flow happens without resistance. Additionally, your mat should not be cramped by bins, planters, or loose shoes. Visual clutter at the entrance sends confusing signals to both guests and energy fields. It's akin to walking into a conversation already crowded with noise. You're not sure where to begin. Keep the space around your mat clear, spacious, and intentional. And never, under any circumstance, place your doormat near a drain or sewer outlet. In Feng Shui, drains are symbolic of energy loss. To position your welcoming space next to a channel of loss is to tell the universe, whatever comes in will leak out. That is not a message you want to send. As a final enhancement, consider what lies beneath the mat. As shared earlier, placing a Feng Shui coin, a pinch of sea salt, or a one-line intention slip under your mat layers subtle yet potent meaning into the surface level. Your doormat becomes more than fabric. It becomes a field. And when that field is designed with awareness, it doesn't just protect your home, it primes it for grace. A real-life threshold turnaround. He had always prided himself on being a man of grit. An entrepreneur in his mid-40s, Jack had built his consulting business from scratch. Through late nights, relentless networking, and a personality that he himself would describe as no nonsense. Clients came, contracts were signed, and payments, though sometimes delayed, eventually trickled in. But lately, something had huited. Projects stalled for no obvious reason. Emails with proposals went unanswered. Clients grew testy, even combative. And most perplexing of all, the energy in his home felt thick, as if opportunities walked up to the front door, hesitated, and turned away. He dismissed it at first. Business ebbs and flows, he told himself. Maybe it's the market, maybe people are tightening budgets. But beneath the spreadsheets and logic, Jack couldn't shake a strange sense of friction. like something invisible but persistent was leaning against his forward momentum. Then, one evening, after scrolling past yet another delayed payment notification, he stood in his entryway and noticed something he hadn't really seen in years. His doormat. Thick coir, heavy and worn, it bore bold black lettering that read, "Don't make it weird." At the time he bought it, he thought it was clever, just enough edge to reflect his sarcasm. But now it struck him differently. The phrase no longer felt humorous. It felt confrontational, sharp, like a warning, not a welcome. That night, almost on impulse, Jack began reading about the energy of thresholds. He stumbled across teachings in Feng Shui, referencing the mouth of qi, the entrance where all energetic currents first meet a home. The doormat, it said, wasn't just a place to wipe your feet. It was the home's first filter, a symbol, a statement. What lived at the threshold whispered silently to both people and opportunity. This is how you'll be received. The next week, Jack booked a consultation with a local Feng Shui expert. She arrived at his home, glanced briefly at the mat, and smiled with a softness that carried no judgment, only awareness. "Your door," she said gently, "has been asking for permission to welcome peace, but the mat is still guarding the war." That one sentence landed deeper than Jack expected. Under her guidance, Jack replaced the mat. In place of the bristled coir stood a soft bamboo weave, light in color, welcoming in tone. No text, just texture. A subtle invitation, not a defense. Beneath it, wrapped in red thread, he placed a small bronze coin engraved with a Chinese character for open flow. The consultant called it a heaven-earth unity coin, a way of harmonizing what's above and what supports from below. "Think of it as a seal," she explained, "not magical but meaningful. You're sealing the intention that your door no longer rejects opportunity, it receives it." In the weeks that followed, Jack made no changes to his marketing. He didn't revamp his sales pitch or adjust pricing. What he did notice, however, was the tone in his interactions. Clients called with clearer communication. Some apologized for late responses. 2 invoices that had sat dormant for over a month were paid in full, without follow-up. One woman, previously stiff and transactional, arrived at a meeting with a handmade thank you card. Was it coincidence? Perhaps. But Jack didn't think so. He noticed something else too. He no longer felt braced every time the doorbell rang. There was no tension in the air, no subconscious defense. Instead, his front entry began to feel like a calm breath, a space that both he and others could approach without resistance. One morning, sipping his coffee and looking at the soft mat that now marked his threshold, Jack thought back to that sarcastic phrase, "Don't make it weird." He chuckled, not with regret, but with recognition. That mat had reflected who he was once, guarded, performative, armored, but not anymore. Now he preferred peace to provocation, and somehow the world had begun responding in kind. The lesson: shift the welcome and the world adjusts its footing. What meets you at the threshold doesn't just see your house, it reads your signal. And the signal you send begins, quietly but powerfully, beneath your feet. Final. There's a quiet power in things we step over every day. The welcome mat, tread up and unnoticed, often stained with weather and time, might seem insignificant. But in the language of energy, it is the first word your home speaks. It's the first handshake your future receives. You don't need to renovate your entire house. You don't need rare artifacts or high-priced talismans. Sometimes all that's required is a shift in signal, one small act of intention placed exactly where opportunity waits to cross the threshold. A clean mat, a hidden blessing, a phrase beneath your feet that reminds both you and the universe, "I'm ready to receive what's meant for me." In both Feng Shui and Buddhist philosophy, fortune doesn't flow to the loudest or the busiest. It flows to what is aligned. And alignment begins quite literally where you stand. So ask yourself gently today, if someone were to read your doormat as a message to the universe, what would they hear? Would it be sarcastic, confused, outdated? Or would it be a quiet, open invitation to peace, clarity, and growth? Let this be your turning point. Not a dramatic renovation, but a subtle recoding of your home's energetic gateway. Whether it's replacing a harsh mat with a soft one, slipping a coin of intention beneath it, or simply wiping it clean while saying, "Only truth and blessing may enter," each gesture sends ripples far beyond the floorboards. And perhaps the greatest reminder is this: the door to your future doesn't swing on effort alone. It swings on alignment. If today's reflection helped you see your home or your threshold a little differently, I'd be honored if you'd take one quiet step further. Like this video, leave a comment below about which shift you're inspired to make and subscribe to New Day Mindfulness. Your support helps us reach 1,000 followers, and more importantly, helps plant new seeds of awareness in homes around the world. Because a humble mat can carry a mighty intention. Step wisely and let fortune follow.